Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Working That Is Chrononaut Chronicles. My name is Bill, and I will be your guide on this particular Sonic adventure. The show is, of course, sponsored by mysticalwares.com. That is Derek Condit's metaphysical supply shop located in Mount Vernon, Washington. So if you're in the area, definitely check out the store, and if not, and even if you are, definitely go to the website, see everything there that he has to offer, um, including a free scalar energy session available weekly. It changes week per week. More on that later. Um, but what is it that we exactly do here on Chrononaut Chronicles? Well, since this is a working, right? This is a four-part working, and the end goal of this working is to help uh, bring help bring into being, help to anchor in whatever your highest and best timeline is. And that is a decision that only you can make, right? So I'm not uh, offering advice at all here, really. We're just um, going through some helpful exercises that would enable you to better uh, manage your timeline, so to speak. So, what exactly are the four steps? Well,
These are things that Bill does every day.
Well, the podcast actually keeps me on track. I haven't looked at the almanac in forever since we recorded like a month ago. I think it's been a month since our last show. So I wish I could say that. Even the gratitude segment. But yes, those are our two first steps, or our first parts. The We cover the old farmer's almanac very quickly at the beginning, and this helps us expand our awareness, especially in relationship to planetary energies and where they are, and if we want to work with them and capitalize on them at all. Specifically, I guess the moon. There's a lot of moon information in the almanac, and the more I learn about the moon, the more it's probably a good idea to keep an eye on it and to kind of ebb and flow with its energy, or at least be able to, you know, mitigate it or work to better work with it, right? So yes, awareness with the almanac is the first part. Gratitude, our gratitude segment is the second part, and the point behind this is uh, it's intent, right? It is love. It is to connect our hearts and our minds to create that coherence and to hopefully sustain the field, definitely throughout the show, but in between meetings as well. So yes, I haven't really thought about. Well, actually, I have thought about gratitude since the last show. So that is something I do pretty much uh, every day. Try to anyway. But yeah, so love, a very key ingredient here in this working, and that brings us to the third segment, which is the silver segment. And this is all about expansion. We are learning something new, and we're looking for silver linings if there are any to be found. And then the last part is the sword segment, and this really deals in timeline management. This is where we get into helping in, well, all of this helps to anchor in your highest and best timeline, but the sword segment deals in matters involving spirit, dimensions, metaphysics, timelines, consciousness, and transformation. And the transformation is the key part in this, I would say, sword segment, because we're making a choice, right? And a choice involves moving from one state to another, possibly, hopefully, moving out of a victim mentality and into a hero mentality. A lot of this is the point behind a lot of the spells, I guess. This one in particular is a reminder, right, that we we are not victims. There are only volunteers here. So this segment is an exploration in method in how to most effectively and efficiently use our thoughts. Our thoughts are expressions of consciousness, and so thinking intentionally can navigate us towards the fulfillment of our desire, our highest and best timeline. And this week, for the silver segment, we've got a few headlines plus another profile in Wizardry. We're going to explore green wizardry and what that looks like according to the schema put forth by Azazel, involving the four factions, which is something that we have covered before in the show. Definitely go back and start with, I think we did a gold faction wizard. So start there maybe. That was Joseph McMonagle. And then the sword segment is we're continuing on with our exploration of Neville Goddard's 1952, The Power of Awareness. We'll be reading from the chapter entitled Attention today, which I think is pretty fitting. And yeah, that's a short reading. So the bulk of this will be silver segment stuff, which is okay because we haven't had an episode in a while. Life gets crazy sometimes. But speaking of not being able to stay on schedule, we're actually recording this on a Thursday, but serendipitously, it is also 1 11, so we got that triple one in the date today. And it is also a new moon. It's a new moon, and it is also conjunct with Pluto. I'm saying also a lot. So yeah, that's Thursday today, new moon conjunct with Pluto. And it looks like Sunday, we have the moon and Saturn conjunct. Going into Monday of next week, since this will be, we like to forecast out for a week when we do the Old Farmer's Almanac. Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, actually. So one of my, I don't know, favorite holidays, I guess, even though we don't get it off work anyway. I mean, if you work for a bank, maybe you might. In addition to MLK Day, the Moon and Neptune will be conjunct on Monday. And that pretty much rounds out the coming week for the Old Farmer's Almanac. Which brings us to the gratitude segment. And my gratitude has been exercise recently. I have restarted my routine. I'm making some tweaks to the number of reps and the resistance bands and the circuits at the end. So I'm kind of revamping my old routine that Todd Cave actually helped put together. We've had him on the show before. And interestingly enough, I went to my biofield tuning practitioner, my sound healer here in town. I haven't seen her in well over a year, I think. Well, no, I think it was shy of a year. But anyway, she said I looked good for for energetically. The energy flow was good, and she had asked if I'd been doing anything to help with that. And the only thing that came to mind was the Wim Hof breathing, which I was doing more of, weeks ago. But I think the main thing is exercise because it is breath work, right? Because when you're exercising, your breath to movement, right? So which is, you know, it's still breath, just an
Oh,
add.
yeah. I mean, every single system in your body is connected. If you're using it, you're exercising it. So you're doing something you don't normally do, and you're highly oxygenating your body.
Yeah, yeah, and she was able to notice that. So there were just a few minor issues that popped up, right? She likes to say that everybody's like an onion, right? Everybody's got different layers and different things to come to the surface during different sessions, right? And I had one thing pop out in the gestation part of my field, which is at the very edge, like before you were born type thing. And then there were a couple other ancestral issues that popped up that weren't mine necessarily, if we want to use that possessive term. But I was, I don't know, holding energy or connected to ancestors that needed some love. That's all. Just needed to send them some love. So that was good. That was good experience, and yeah, grateful for that too. But yeah, Adam, what? Thank you for being here, by the way. And what are you grateful for?
Oh, thank you for being here too. Big shout out to your parents.
Yeah, yeah, it was nice to see them over the holidays. Got to spend a week with them. So yeah, lots to be thankful for.
Yeah, my gratitude picks up about where we last recorded. I've now been employed for about 3 weeks now, and I am both super happy for that and super happy for the fact that I'm working in an industry and have a job that, yeah, it could not be any better. It's the most enjoyable position I've ever had. So for that, I'm incredibly grateful.
Yeah, that's seems like a good fit, and yeah, I'm excited for you, especially since we did that sigil to help out with that. Because my qualifier was the most perfect or the perfect occupation. The perfection was in there. I don't remember the exact wording, but yeah, seems like it worked out. That makes me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a stinker come along that I thought was going to be ace and had to quit the job after 2 days. So, yeah, it was one of those think you've hit rock bottom and then boom, best thing ever. So, hey, I say it worked.
It did. It did work. And yeah, so making sigils is that kind of leads into I think one of the stories that you had lined up, doesn't it?
I do have some stories. And this is more of a really stinking cool and right up our alley, but B, an opportunity for some listeners out there. If you are one of the candidates for a new experiment that Dean Radin is performing.
I want to be a candidate. That sounds exciting.
Let me get this pulled up. All right. So, for anybody who doesn't know, Dean Radin is a scientist at the Noetic Institute. I'm a huge fanboy of his. He's been uh, really just involved in so many aspects of science and really connecting science to what would be considered the esoteric or magical practices. And this is a continuation on that work. So I'm going to play a clip here. It's about, I think, 3 to 4.5 minutes long that's going to describe everything. Um, and we have had Dean Radin on the podcast before, not this podcast, but we had him on 13 Questions as a guest.
Yeah, we did. That was awesome.
Clicking play.
Hello, I'm Dean Radin, Chief Scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences and Principal Investigator for the Sigil experiment. This short video is an introduction to this experiment. Sigil is an acronym for a scientific investigation of the role of gazing with intuition at light. Gazing with intuition means seeing not with the eye, but with the mind's eye, intuitively or by the imagination. Sigil is also a word for an esoteric magical practice that involves creating a symbol for an intention or a goal that you wish to happen. The goal for this study is to investigate the quantum observer effect, which refers to a curious property of quantum mechanics in which observing or measuring a quantum object like a photon changes the behavior of that object. In oversimplified terms, this suggests that something about consciousness may play an important role in the physical world. Another video on this website goes into more detail on the background and scientific studies that are exploring this idea. Let me just say in summary that there is substantial, independently repeated empirical evidence collected over the past century and published in scientific journals that supports the idea that this mind-matter interaction effect is quite real. The effects tend to be very small in absolute magnitude, and they can be quite variable from one person to the next. But this is not uncommon when studying the leading edge of the life sciences, and especially when it comes to human behavior. So these kinds of studies require a great deal of data and statistical evaluation of the results. But again, when the existing studies are analyzed, the preponderance of the results suggest that consciousness interacts directly with aspects of the physical world. This experiment then has two main goals. The first is to explore if focused attention and intention can in fact cause a measurable change in the behavior of light. This experiment is important because it addresses a long-standing problem in mainstream physics, which I've already mentioned as the quantum observer effect. We know it's a problem because there are multiple interpretations of this effect, and while some may insist it has nothing to do with consciousness, that conclusion is not supported by a growing body of experimental evidence. The second goal is to recruit people with certain skills or talents. We're doing this recruitment process through 4 phases or steps. The first step is the one you're looking at right now. We're casting a net worldwide to invite adult candidates who can understand and read English to fill out questionnaires that ask about you, your personality, your beliefs, and experiences. Previous studies show that these factors are predictors of how well people can perform in these kinds of experiments. We're especially interested in people who have experience and engage in practices that are designed to enhance the ability to focus attention and intention. This would include meditators, martial artists, or other athletic styles that require exceptional mental control and one-pointed attention. It could also include Wiccans, neo-pagans, witches, and others engaged in magical rituals and practices, especially the use of sigil magic. Those who spontaneously or through intense practice have also learned to exercise one of their or more psychic abilities, like clairvoyance, would be additional good candidates. In that sense, the ideal candidate would be a long-term meditator who practices sigil magic and can exercise clairvoyance at will. After analyzing the results of these questionnaires, we'll invite promising candidates to go on to step 2, which will be a series of performance tests. These are standardized online tests that measure the degree to which you can control focused attention. In step 3, the top 100 people selected from step 2 will be invited to a Zoom call, one person at a time, by members of the ION science staff. The purpose of that call is to describe the experiment in enough detail for you to decide if this is something you're really motivated to do, because it will take at least 7 hours of your time over the course of 1 month. We also want to be sure that you're serious because we'll be sending you an optical system that was custom made for this study, and which will be the physical target for this mind-matter interaction study. You'll be able to keep the device for your experiments afterwards, or you can send it back to us if you wish. But it requires that you have an up-to-date PC or Mac computer, a quiet place to do the experiment, and a convenient access to the internet. Like, this experiment should not be attempted by using the Wi-Fi at a McDonald's or a Starbucks because it's far too noisy and busy. The final step will involve our selecting 50 individuals who we judge from the 3 previous steps.
So, are you interested, Bill?
Yeah, it seems pretty rigorous. Probably won't make it past like the second round, maybe. I don't know.
Never say never. And, this might be something that Mr. Shungite is interested in.
Yeah.
He is, it seems to be an individual that, if interested in having the time. And I just want to wet your whistle a little bit more. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. And also, if you wouldn't mind, would you be able to include all these links in the show notes? Awesome. Encourage you to go directly to Dean Radin and subscribe to him on YouTube. And all the details will be able to be linked to him through there. But I'm going to skip ahead a couple of minutes. I think you'll like this, Bill.
A modern up-to-date Windows computer, and also a modern up-to-date Mac computer. I've also used AI to create this little sigil with this all-seeing eye in it as a reminder of this is all about not the physical eye, but your mind's eye in the experiment. And so this is a sticker. You can stick it on the box or anywhere else that you may like. And I'll also include this little laughing Buddha statue that you can put on top of the box to remind yourself that the attitude that it takes to do this kind of experiment, or almost any kind of psychic experiment, is one of lightheartedness. You don't want to spend, you don't want to grunt and groan at the box here to get the results that you're looking for. It's best to keep the effortless striving sense. You're certainly applying effort because there is a task at hand, but it should be effortless. So you strive with no effort. It sounds like a paradox, but that's the kind of state that seems to be best in order to do these kinds of tasks.
So there you go. Seems like Mr. Dean Radin is right up our alley.
Yeah, that's super cool. I like the whole effortless striving um
Mm-hmm.
analogy. That reminds me of controlled folly, which I think Vadim Zealand discussed in reality transurfing, which we have yet to cover on the show, but we will eventually. And yeah, that's just an overall good freaking tool to have in your bag to be able to effortlessly strive towards any goal, really. To take
But
that attitude and apply it.
here's what I love. The things that we do on the show, the doing the sigil, guess what? Being turned into science. The attention of putting the intention on something. And essentially, as I understand it, looking into this experiment with the optical light drives, is it'll provide feedback, much in the way that remote viewing does, so that you can tell how you're doing. And it's also going to have you give intention for 30 seconds and then not give intention for 30 seconds. And it's something that you need to train yourself or be able to enact and pull back. Or if you're in the sense of meditating, not pulling out of the meditation, but going from being in a meditative state to shifting your mind elsewhere and bringing it back. And there's something in that putting the intention upon it that they're looking to see if it changes the light within the box. So it's a little scientific experiment. It's shooting photons and recording them in some way. I haven't looked into the exact details. I found this today and was just blown away.
Yeah, that little device they send you. I mean, that would just be cool to have to, play around with, like experiment with, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the ghost in the machine type thing. It's like or a ghost box. It's like it's actually measuring your own clairvoyance.
Yeah. And you
Dean
get,
has done experiments on that in the past, showing that there absolutely 1000% is precognition in humans. And I've probably mentioned it before, but they would flash images on a person and they're reading your biometric signs. So kind of like, your heart rate, your pulse, the conductivity of your skin, how much you're sweating, all of these things, I think like pupil dilation, but a bunch of indicators of anticipating something with an emotion. And they'd flip up these pictures randomly that would just go flip, 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 right? And you just look at them and it was all randomized. So it was not decided upon. But like microseconds before a photo had even been decided upon, they would interject something that was violence, sexual, things that would elicit an emotion, and were able to show that people were able to precognitively anticipate the images showing up to where they had never even been recorded or determined yet by the randomization. Much in the way that when we do remote viewing with Justin and I, we won't even pick the targets until after we've done the remote viewing. So I don't know. It's fascinating to me.
yeah, I like that this machine gives immediate feedback though. Like with the remote viewing, you need some way to verify what you just did, right? But
Yeah.
with it seems like it's immediate, so that's pretty exciting. And then I like this whole attention thing ties right into the sword segment, which we'll get to at the end of the show. But yeah, hell yeah, Dean Radin. Definitely go check out the 13 questions Dean Radin interview. It was a very interesting format, one of our shorter ones. Dean doesn't seem like he gives a whole lot of interviews. He's a very
No, he's very strict with his time. I mean, he's a full-time scientist, and that is all he has ever done.
yeah, yeah.
And I
So
mean that in the most respectful way.
right, yeah, absolutely, great, good dude for sure. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had him on 13 questions, right?
Yeah, no, I fanboyed out.
Yeah, I had no idea that you were such a fan when I booked him. That was awesome.
Yeah, he's one of those names that, since I've been a little kid, seeing him pop up in, just the old remote viewing videos and the things that were going on at the Stanford Institute, with Uri Geller and all these things that, yeah, he's kind of been in that my background vernacular. And then, I mean, as he's continued to do his work and move more and more towards uh, proving magic with science, yeah, it's really cool to be able to meet your heroes and not be disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually not a good thing to place anybody on pedestals, which is something that we learned in 13 questions. At least I did anyway. If I didn't already know it before. It was a good reminder. See, there we go with the reminders again, right? It's all just one big reminder. Anyway, what else do you got for us?
Well, I've got two interesting things. It's now been found that human cells actually vibrate at a certain frequency. And I have a clip.
Yay, more clips.
All right. So this is from a very interesting YouTube channel that I follow. It's by Anton Petrov, and it's all on science, usually around astronomy, and that type of science. Very, very mainstream, very, anti-UFO. But I'm absolutely fascinated by following him because he'll dig into all the topics that become controversies or will show the other side. And when I see something like this, I can see, of course, the material sciences and this being great for medicine and being able to, help cure people through frequency and vibration, much in the way that a cat can heal itself through purr. But I start to look at this as like, well, what about, chanting and singing and things of vibrations that humans could do, um, that would enact these things that may be part of who we are as human beings that we just naturally do. And kind of taking that ultimate science of, yeah, you want a machine to heal somebody, but, maybe if you were just magically, chanting the right spell, that frequency could actually heal somebody. So I encourage you, check out his channel and subscribe. There will be a link to this video, and here's a short clip.
Researchers working on various human cells and using these microcantilevers for slightly different purposes detected unexpected signals. Here, the vibrations were just a little bit different from what the scientists hypothesized, eventually leading the scientists to propose that maybe, just maybe, this is actually because the cells themselves also vibrate, changing the overall results. And so, in this new study, the scientists decided to focus specifically on discovering the frequency. First, they used a tiny microcantilever. Here, this was approximately 50 micrometers by 270 nanometers across and made out of silicon and gold. And second, they decided to pick certain human cells used previously for a lot of different research. Here, they used individual human breast cells, in this case designed for medical studies. And by placing these cells on the microcantilever and then varying their vibrations, they discovered that they do have a resonant frequency after all, with slightly different frequencies depending on the size of the cell. They actually analyzed frequencies between 1000 Hz and 1 MHz, but found specific anomalies between 10 and 30 kHz and then between 150 and 180 kHz, basically suggesting that those seem to be vibration frequencies of these very specific breast cells. And at least in theory, those smaller frequencies between 10 and 30 kHz can physically be heard by human ear. And so theoretically, instead of just looking at the cells, we can technically listen to them as well.
And to add on to that, what type of industries, what type of frequencies that we could be creating, what other type of resonant vibrations might be inferred through other frequencies, reverberating. uh, you know, could this be something that, certain types of RF signals could initiate within the human? So it is absolutely fascinating, but just more to the fact that we are frequency, we are resonance, that I resonate with something, I resonate with a person, I resonate with a thought, that maybe that really is everything. Everything is a resonance, and you have a control of your frequency.
Maybe. What is this maybe? Everything is frequency.
It is. I believe it is. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I think isn't that kind
Again,
of
listen, Bill, if this is all a simulation, then it really doesn't matter what I think.
well, maybe. But if you're in charge of it, then it kind of does. But
That's true.
it,
Unless it's co-optive.
which you still are kind of an important part of.
That's true.
Yeah, this reminds me of the whole basis behind homeopathy, right? Isn't that about finding the frequency of, whatever is bugging you, right? And then you match it, and then you crank up the amplitude, right, until it vibrates so much, so far, right, that it breaks apart the cell, right? It just
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And then when you have the idea that water is programmable with frequency, then you can program water with the frequency of a medicine and have very, very low detectable levels within the water. But then you still have, as the theory goes, that it's just as potent because it's carrying the signal. And then at the same time, when those things are being made, that it's just as important as the people that are around it, because there are certain people whom, if they're around the equipment during the production, it the end result will just not work. They somehow are able to negate it,
weird.
turn the placebo into a nocebo.
Yeah, right. So this has to anything with chanting, singing,
Hmm.
talking, even humming, all of this affects our vagus nerve.
Yep.
And that's like one of the main biggest nerves that runs throughout our entire nervous system, right? So and it affects our heart, right? Our digestion, um, pretty important things that are involuntary for the most part, but if you can affect your vagus nerve, you can reset those systems, right? Which is what uh, Wim Hof breathing does, but minus there's no humming involved, which you could probably, add a chant or some kind of uh, weird noise to your exhale if you wanted to help with that. But yeah, definitely um, super cool stuff.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Oh
And I
yeah.
also like the fact that the instrument that they used, which was a little cantilever, kind of like a diving board as it was described, is made out of silicon and gold. Just, one of those other, like, how complicated is it? Yeah, it's just pieces of the earth already there, assembled in a new way to make a discovery about frequency.
It's just rocks.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a little bit of gold, just, a little bit of sand, just what the streets of heaven are to be made of, right?
Exactly. Speaking of sound, though, did you hear that new Netflix movie, Leave the World Behind, actually has a track of infrasound embedded in in the file?
No, that's interesting. But I mean, it could be in there. I'm postulating if somebody's got, a really nice, 7.1 or more audio system, so that you can actually get like a low, very disturbing, like when you go to a movie theater, there's that type horror groan sound.
I don't know that you would have to. Okay, in order for it to be detectable, maybe you would need that type of system equipment, right? But I think it still has an effect on your body, and I only say that
Yeah.
because
Well, I say that because you have to be able to reproduce the sound, because just because the signal's there, it's an infrasound, your TV speakers are probably not going to be doing it. So it becomes one of those, why would you put it in there if, unless you have the ability to hear it?
so it's not. You don't think the equipment
Well,
has
let's say there was nefarious purposes behind it. Um, the vast majority of people are never going to be able to reproduce that sound with their equipment, so it wouldn't have much effect at all. You'd have to be encountering people with high-end systems. And again, that'd be having to know what the frequency of the signal is that they've embedded it versus the capabilities of it being reproduced by a speaker. It might be too low that it can't even be reproduced by a commercial speaker.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. The video that I saw was some guy talking, like it was his job was to like download and splice together movies for the past 30, 40 years or whatever, and he has never seen one with more than two tracks, even audio and a video track, right? But this one
Interesting.
had four of them, right? So I don't know what the extra one was, but audio, video, infrasound, and then there was some other weird thing that he's never seen before. But
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know about. I can also think of, it might be something like the Matrix movies where when you're in the Matrix, every single thing has a green tinge to it. There might be something where they're purposefully adding a distortion underneath everything to make it uncomfortable, make it different, make it a completely different experience than you've ever had before in a movie.
yeah, I mean, and then the fact that it's not 432 hertz is just horrible to begin with, but maybe that's for another show. And if we had more time, I would go and dig out that video of the movie editor guy talking about it. But we've got a full segment here, so we'll leave that on the table for now. And I think you had one more story to go.
Oh yeah, if you want to dive into that, this ties right back into, actually I should have done this one first, I guess. It's right back into that weird sigil-y thing. Let me get this video queued. All right. Are you familiar with Diana Polska?
No.
All right. So she is a religious studies expert. She's done religious studies for a very long time and got really, really into it and started seeing connections to things like UFOs and started getting really interested in that kind of aspect of religion. And she ended up meeting with a person whom worked for NASA, had been there for over 40 years, was an intern within NASA when he first started under Warner von Braun, and has been there through, pretty much everything. Anything that's launching, off the pad at the Cape, he's in the control room. So this is a description by her. She was just on a little bit ago on the Theories of Everything podcast with Kurt Jamungle, one of my favorite shows of all time. I watch it all the time. Called Toe, Theories of Everything. There will also be a description in the show notes, so I encourage you to check out this entire clip. And you'll also get to see some photos when you follow the link to what Diana is talking about. So I'm going to leave it right there and I'm going to let the clip roll.
One thing that was kind of funny about my friendship with Tyler was that he was part of the space, really integral into the space program, and he launches.
Sorry, I need to adjust the audio, Bill. I'm really sorry.
One thing that was kind of funny about my friendship with Tyler was that he was part of the space program. He's really integral into the space program, and he launches, these rockets and works with SpaceX and that type of thing. And what I found out, which he actually did not know, and I pointed it out to him, was that the whole thing was a ritual. The whole thing was ritualized. So they identified certain time periods astronomically when it would be beneficial to launch. And they also the rockets had Roman gods on them. And they also had Latin, first century Latin, not medieval Latin. It wasn't Catholic Latin. It was basically imperialistic Latin. And so, and everybody had to stay in their own space. Like there was a place where they had to stay. They wore the same clothes for every mission. And they ate the same food.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Are you referring to a SpaceX launch? I missed that.
Yeah. Well, not all SpaceX launches, just certain of them with Tyler involved. And so when he would be involved launching these satellites into space, a lot of times they'd be with SpaceX because that's who they used.
I see.
Yeah. So they would go, they've been doing this it looks like from the 1950s onward, they've been doing this ritual. And they would even have like a chaplain there. And, it was very ritualized. And so I noticed that and I asked him about it. And I said, do you know that this is first century Latin that's written on these rockets? And he said, no, I didn't know that. He didn't even know it was Latin. And so we read them. I translated them all. And I said, this says that. And I said, who up there in space is going to be reading this? Like, why would you put that on there? That seems so strange. And he said, well, I imagine it's for them. And I said, okay, who are they? And so he just didn't say anything.
Winter is here, and I love video.
Winter's
So
coming.
I thought that was really, really interesting. And I'm going to pull up just to show you because this will be in the show notes. That was a very short clip.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm trying to share my screen.
Oh, is that something that I have to allow you?
Yeah, you'll need to.
I don't know. I'm just gonna make you host for a second and then just give it back to me when you're done. Or I can reclaim it. Should know how to do that by now, but I don't.
All right. So I'm just putting this in here for you, Bill. I'm also going to send you the link so that the listeners can look. But we're looking at what looks like a giant Pegasus.
Okay, are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I didn't click the share button. There you go.
Ah, okay.
There's another one which has a man hammering down on top of like forging something. It's got that Latin written all around it, and this is on a rocket as well. We've got another one here that has 3 serpents. Looks like 2 serpents on the side, with the center one being a like cobra with its hood out, wrapped and entangling the earth. And that's a mission patch, which would have also been painted on the vehicle. And then we have another multitude of mission patches here. Octopus
Green
reaching
door.
around the earth, like a sorceress standing with a trident with some sort of electricity coming out of her. U.S. Space Force logo with a gray alien head on the top of it. Classified flight tests that have what looks like a symbol on top of a B-52 with an alien wrapping its hands around it. Like, these are incredibly weird things that are part of our space program that we don't get to see. And it's all the behind the scenes stuff. Women with a partial mask that looks like an owl carrying a shield and a spear over the earth. And again, all of these with this very old Latin phrasing written on there. And then you have somebody who's been there for a long time, been there since the beginning, knows all of the secret programs, uh, saying it's for them. Like, what does that even mean? Does this really lead back to that idea that in like Arthur C. Clarke or the Stanley Kubrick 2001, where we went to the moon, we found something, and we were told you can't go here, you're not allowed.
Yeah, dude. There's people. There's people on the moon. There be dragons there.
So, yeah, if you're at all interested in space travel, rituals, and that very deep esoteric side of science that nobody wants to talk about, the fact that our space program, Werner von Braun, a Nazi, known for hanging the slowest workers at his factories, uh, not a good person, and they were doing all these crazy rituals to get into space.
So that one patch that had the green wizard on it and it said something about the green door, that is something that Azazel discusses quite frequently, and it ties in very well to our class on the green wizard, Hiram Abiff. If you can find that image again, maybe point it out to you. It's just to the bottom right of the words of the patch. A lifetime of silence behind the green door. So apparently, to I guess we'll jump into the class from here.
Damn, that's a nice little connection.
Yeah, dude. So the four factions. The one that we're going to discuss today is the green faction. There are also blue, gold, and red. The reds would be the parasites, the ones that are nefarious, right? We all kind of know who they are. The other three, green, gold, and blue, kind of being on their own team, but they collaborate with each other. It's a very interesting schema that is put forth in the Azazel telegram. But the he always talks about a green door and a blue door, and that these are essentially pathways to black world space projects, right? To unacknowledged special access projects. You can be recruited into these programs and actually go off world, right? So there are he
That's
does
interesting. It reminds me a bit of uh David Lynch and the White Lodge and the Black Lodge.
I'm not super familiar with that, but
Ah,
yeah. Yeah, it's
well, I'd like to describe David Lynch, but it's impossible.
we'll
But
do
check out
a
Twin Peaks. Highly recommend the series.
I never finished watching that, by the way, but Ellie couldn't handle it. It was too suspenseful, and I don't blame her. It was kind of creepy. Um,
Just
but
wait till you get to the new ones.
yeah, give me my screen back, and then we can move on to the. How do I? Ah, how do I reclaim the host? Um,
I have to do it.
oh, okay. So yeah, just a brief explanation of what the factions are. These have been around for forever, basically. And what exactly does the Green faction deal with, right? Well, that would be warfare, like surface warfare and subterranean warfare, which, if you've been noticing all the manhole fires and explosions going around, that might be catching your attention a little bit. There was some tunnels discovered under the Shabbat in New York recently, so that's very pretty disturbing there, but we'll leave that for now. So this week's class, this is going to be the last profile in wizardry we do for a while, is Green Wizard Sir Hiram Stevens Maxim. And I'm going to be reading from alchitron.com, and then we will look at the actual text in, well, this is a article provided by Azazel, and then we're going to go look at the actual text in Telegram that Azazel put together for the class, because he talks a lot about machine guns, and there's some pictures in there that we can look at. And then there is a tie-in to possibly him leading a double life and having teleportation technology. And then if we have time, maybe we'll get into um, Marvin the Martian. There's a Marvin the Martian tie-in here, of all things. So
Awesome. I'm still trying to get over the fact that there's such a great synchronicity with me sharing the video or the image with the green wizard
dude,
in the door.
it is. I've kind of come to expect it now when we do these shows. It always seems to be like we don't even have to worry about segues. They just make
Well, and then
themselves
like what are
predictable.
what are we doing here, Bill, when this is what um science, reaching space, creating that next level of exploration is doing? Like they've got to be two sides of the same coin.
Oh yeah, 100%. All right, so
Chrononauts, we own time.
traveling, surfing time waves, something like that. Something cool, some spiffy slogan right here. All right, so I guess I won't share my screen that's just yet, but link will be in the show notes. Here we go. Just some general, basic, normie level information about Sir Hiram Stevens Maxim to begin with. He was an American-born inventor who moved from the United States to the UK at the age of 41. He remained an American citizen until he became a naturalized British subject in 1900. He was the inventor of the Maxim gun, the first portable, fully automatic machine gun, and held patents on mechanical devices such as a mousetrap, hair curling irons, and steam pumps. He laid claim to inventing the light bulb and even experimented with powered flight, but his large aircraft designs were never successful. However, his captive flying machine amusement ride, designed as a means by which to fund his research while generating public interest in flight, was highly successful. So yeah, he made a roller coaster, essentially. Birth and early life. Maxim was born in Sangerville, Maine, in the United States in 1840. He became an apprentice coach builder at the age of 14, and 10 years later took up a job at the machine works of his uncle, Levi Stevens, in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. He subsequently worked as an instrument maker and as a draftsman. His early jobs in these arenas led him to be often disappointed with workers when he ran his own companies later on in life. Family. His brother, Hudson Maxim, was also a military inventor specializing in explosives. They worked quite closely together until later in life, when there was a disagreement on a patent for smokeless powder. The patent, Hiram claimed, had been issued under the name H. Maxim, and that because of this, his brother was able to stake a claim as the powder being his own. Not the first time that he's going to run into patent problems in his life. Hudson was a skilled and knowledgeable man and sold arms in the US, while Hiram worked mainly in Europe. Hudson had success in the United States, which caused jealousy from Hiram. He lamented having a double of himself running around the States. The jealousy and disagreements caused a rift between the brothers that would last the rest of their lives. It's kind of sad. Hiram Maxim married his first wife, Jane Budden, in 1876. Their children were Hiram Percy Maxim, Florence Maxim, who married George Albert Cutter, and Adeline Maxim, who married Eldon Jobert. Hiram Percy Maxim followed in his father's and uncle's footsteps and became a mechanical engineer and weapons designer as well. But he is perhaps best known for his early amateur radio experiments and for founding the American Radio Relay League. His invention of the Maxim silencer for noise suppression came too late to save his father's hearing. Hiram Percy later wrote a biography of his father entitled A Genius in the Family, containing about 60 anecdotes of Hiram Percy's experiences with his father throughout his early life until about 12. Most of these short stories were entertaining. They give a reader and insiders a child's view of the man's personal and family life. A film based on his son's book was released in 1946 called So Goes My Love, starring Don Amenche and Myra Loy. He married his second wife, Sarah, daughter of Charles Hayes of Boston, in 1881. It is not clear if he was legally divorced from his first wife at this time. A woman called Helen Layton brought a case against Maxim, claiming that he had married her in 1878 and that he was knowingly committing bigamy with his current wife, Jane Budden. She claimed further that Maxim had fathered a child and named Romaine with her. The case was eventually dropped, settled for under $1,000. The original amount asked for was $25,000, and Maxim put the near public humiliation and case behind him. Later in life, he left 4,000 pounds sterling to a Romaine denizen, perhaps the child Layton claimed he had fathered. Immigration and knighthood. In 1881, Maxim arrived in England to reorganize the London offices of the U.S. Electric Lighting Company. By 1900, his visits back to the United States became infrequent, and in that same year, Maxim became a naturalized British subject. In the following year, Queen Victoria bestowed a knighthood on him. Queen Victoria died on 22 January 1901, and the actual knighting was done by Maxim's friend and new king, Edward VIII. Profession. Maxim was a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor, a civil, mechanical, and electrical engineer, member of the London Chamber of Commerce, member of the Royal Institution, member of the British Association for the Advancement of Science, member of the British Empire League, interesting, and member of the Royal Society of Arts, also interesting. Inventions. Maxim, a longtime sufferer of bronchitis, patented and manufactured a pocket menthol inhaler and a larger pipe of peace, a steam inhaler using pine vapor that he claimed could relieve asthma, tinnitus, hay fever, and catarrh. Catarrh. Don't know what that is. After being criticized for applying his talents to quackery, he protested that it will be seen that it is a very credible thing to invent a killing machine and nothing less than a disgrace to invent an apparatus to prevent human suffering. Was a quote from him. He also invented a curling iron, an apparatus for demagnetizing watches, magneto-electric machines, devices to prevent the rolling of ships, eyelet and riveting machines, aircraft artillery, an aerial torpedo gun, coffee substitutes, and various oil, steam, and gas engines. Love that coffee substitute thing thrown in there. Good for him. A large furniture factory had repeatedly burned down, and Maxim was consulted on how to prevent a recurrence. As a result, Maxim invented the first automatic fire sprinkler. It would douse the areas that were on fire, and it would report the fire to the fire station. Maxim was unable to sell the idea elsewhere, but when the patent expired, the idea was used. Wah, wah. I shouldn't laugh. The guy's bad luck. Maxim developed and
You didn't
installed.
just laugh. You added cartoon sound effects. I like it. It's like Mario dying.
That's what happens when you're watching Marvin the Martian clips last night trying to do research for the show. Uh, Maxim developed and installed the first electric lights in the New York City building, the Equitable Life Building, at 120 Broadway in the late 1870s. However, he was involved in several lengthy patent disputes with Thomas Edison over his claims to the light bulb. One of these actions regarded the incandescent light bulb, for which Maxim claimed that Edison was credited by means of his better understanding of patenting law. Maxim claimed that an employee of his had falsely patented the invention under his own name, and that Edison proved the employee's claim to be false, knowing that patent law would mean the invention would become public property, allowing Edison to manufacture the light bulb without crediting Maxim as the true inventor. What a dick. Remember learning about this guy in high school, or not in high school, but going through school, and it's just so much praise for Thomas Edison, right? He's so great and he invented all these things. And the more that we learn about him, the more it seems like it's all.
And what's crazier is that those systems are still here today. Alternating current, incandescent bulbs, although they're being phased out, like uh, there's a very long tail connected to that, like the Diesel brothers and the oil industry. These are things that, yeah, it's a couple of people doing some pretty terrible things, co-opting, making a lot of money, but then generations down the line, like it's a machine that's been created that keeps going.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But speaking of machines, we're finally getting into the gun part. So the Maxim gun. Uh, Maxim was reported to have said, quote, "In 1882, I was in Vienna, where I met an American whom I had known in the States. He said, 'Hang your chemistry and electricity. If you want to make a pile of money, invent something that will help these Europeans to cut each other's throats with greater facility.'" End quote. As a child, Maxim had been knocked over by a rifle's recoil, and this inspired him to use that recoil force to automatically operate a gun. Between 1883 and 1885, Maxim patented gas, recoil, and blowback methods of operation. After moving to England, he settled in a large house formerly owned by Lord Thurlow in West Norwood, where he developed his design for an automatic weapon, using an action that would close the breech and compress a spring by storing the recoil energy released by a shot to prepare the gun for its next firing. He thoughtfully ran announcements in the local press warning that he would be experimenting with the gun in his garden and that neighbors should keep their windows open to avoid the danger of broken glass. Maxim
What a
founded
dick.
Maxim founded an arms company with financial backing from Edward Vickers to produce his machine gun in Crayford, Kent, which later merged with Nordenfelt. Subsequently, part of the Shipbuilding Company, Barrow, Barrow Shipbuilding Company, uh, purchased by Vickers Corporation in 1897 formed Vickers, Son, and Maxim. Their improved development of the Maxim gun design, the Vickers machine gun, after Maxim's resignation from the board in 1911 on his 71st birthday, was the standard British machine gun for many years. With arms sales led by Basil Zarahoff, variants of the Maxim gun were bought and used extensively by both sides during World War I. In his later years, Maxim became profoundly deaf, as his hearing had been damaged by years of exposure to the noise of his guns. Imagine that. Ear protection is important.
Should have left his windows closed.
Hadn't invented that silencer yet. You can't. I don't think you can put one on a machine gun though. I at least
Yeah, you can.
Can you?
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you put a silencer on, though, you are diminishing its effectiveness.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely you can. They have like muzzle reducers that they put on machine guns and stuff, so it reduces the flash as well.
So, moving on from the guns for now, we're going to talk about flying machines. Maxim's father had earlier conceived of a helicopter powered by two counter-rotating rotors, but was unable to find a powerful enough engine to build it. Hiram first sketched out plans for a helicopter in 1872, but when he built his first flying machine, he chose to use wings. Before starting design work, he carried out a series of experiments on aerofoil sections in propeller design, at first using a wind tunnel and later building a whirling arm test rig. Construction started in 1889 of a 40-foot long craft with a 110-foot wingspan that weighed 3.5 tons, powered by two lightweight Napath-fired 360 horsepower steam engines driving two 17-foot diameter laminated pine propellers. Conceived of as a test rig, the machine ran on a 1,800 foot length of rail track, which Maxim laid down for the purpose at his home in Bexley. The initial intention was to prevent the machine from lifting off by using heavy cast iron wheels, but after initial trials, Maxim concluded that this would not suffice, and so the machine was fitted with four wheeled outriggers, which were restrained by wooden rails 13 feet outside the central track. In trials in 1894, the machine lifted and was prevented from rising by the outriggers. During its test run, all the outriggers were engaged, showing that it had developed enough lift to take off. But in so doing, it pulled up the track. The tethered flight was aborted in time to prevent disaster. Maxim subsequently abandoned work on it, but his experience he abandoned the work on that to put his experience to building fairground rides. He subsequently noted that a feasible flying machine would need better power to weight engines, such as a petrol combustion engine. Petrol, gas. We call it gas over here in the States. So, captive flying machines. To fund his research into flight and to bring attention to the notion of flight, Maxim designed and built an amusement ride for the Earl's Court exhibition in 1904. The ride was based on a test rig he had devised for his research and consisted of a large spinning frame from which cars hung captive. As the machine spun, the cars would be swung outward through the air, simulating flight. The ride was similar to the later circle swing ride, made popular by in the US by renowned roller coaster designer Harry Traver. Maxim originally intended to use primitive airfoils and wings to allow riders to control their flight, but this was outlawed as unsafe. As a result, Maxim quickly lost interest in the project, declaring the adapted ride as, quote, simply a glorified merry-go-round. Nevertheless, his company built several more rides of various sizes at the Crystal Palace and various seaside resorts, including Southport, New Brighton, and Blackpool, all of which opened in 1904. Originally, Maxim had intended to build only two, but a lengthy breakdown on the original Earl's Court ride forced him to build more to make the venture profitable. He had plans for further variations of the ride, but his disillusionment with the amusement business meant that they were never realized. Although he expressed regrets about the whole project, the rides were held in high regard within the amusement industry, and the Blackpool ride still operates to this day as part of what is now known as Pleasure Beach Amusement Park. Along with the same park's similarly historic river caves, it is the oldest operating amusement ride in Europe. The Flying Machines has the distinction of being virtually unchanged from Maxim's original design. The Blackpool ride's name is now usually abbreviated to the Flying Machine or Flying Machines, although the full name, Sir Hiram Maxim's Captive Flying Machines, is given at the ride entrance. In 2001, Disney California Adventure Park opened, featuring the Golden Zephyr, a modern-day recreation of the Traver version of the ride. The ride itself is much smaller than the Blackpool version, with cars swinging out at a much smaller angle. Nevertheless, engineers from Disney visited Blackpool to inspect the Maxim ride to help design their ride. And the last little bit here, in 1911, Maxim headed the newly formed Graham White Blériot and Maxim Company, founded with the two aviators and 200,000 pounds of capital. He had hoped to produce military aircraft capable of scouting or dropping a 500-pound bomb, but his failing health and financial difficulties with his other enterprises restricted his ability to develop this enterprise before his death. And then lastly is this part at the very end about philosophy and religion. In addition to his civil, mechanical, and electrical endeavors, Maxim compiled and edited a book he called Li Hongchang's Scrapbook. This book was addressed to Li Hongchang, also spelled Li Hongzhang and Li Hongchang, and endeavored to address a belief that, quote, the Chinese were generally puzzled as to how it was possible for people who are able to build locomotives and steamships to have a religion based on a belief in devils, ghosts, impossible miracles, and all the other absurdities and impossibilities peculiar to the religion taught by the missionaries. Maxim held European missionaries in China in low esteem for reasons described in the scrapbook. He stated, quote, it was my aim in compiling for His Excellency a scrapbook with explanatory notes to put the Chinaman right in his respect. I wished to show that we were not all fools. His scrapbook comprised some 400 pages with 42 illustrations, presenting his views on the nature of Christianity in China, and his conclusions on subjects including miracles, spirituality, faith, and the influence of the Bible on the civilization of Europe and America. He concluded his scrapbook with an appeal to the missionaries and his thoughts on the reason for the failure of what he described as missionary propaganda in China. On his religious views, Maxim was an atheist. He died in London, 24 November 1916, and is buried with his wife and grandson. So, pretty interesting dude, I'd say, that we've learned about so far. Now, to share screen, I guess this is for anybody watching on YouTube, you're getting bonus material. All right. Hopping on over to what Azazel actually has prepared. Let me just clean this up real quick. All right. Got a little picture of him here. And Azazel doesn't have a whole lot written, so I'll just read it, even though it might be kind of repetitive. In 1884, Hiram Maxim built the first effective machine gun, which revolutionized warfare. Born in 1840 in Maine, he was apprenticed at 14 to be a carriage maker. While learning the trade, he exhibited a knack for invention, designing a mousetrap that automatically reset and rid local mills of rodents. He obtained the first of his 271 patents at age 26 for a curling iron. By his 30s, Maxim was becoming chief engineer of the United States Electric Lighting Company in New York, for which he introduced carbon filaments for electric light bulbs. At the 1881 Paris exhibition, he demonstrated an electric pressure regulator and was awarded the Legion d'Honneur. That same year, he arrived in England to reorganize the London offices of U.S. Electric Lighting Company. There, he began work on his machine gun. You can see some more pictures here of what this thing looked like. If you're watching on YouTube, a lot more pictures to come. So maybe stop listening and go to YouTube real quick. Maybe I don't know if you want to. Um, at the Paris exhibition in 1881, a man told Maxim that if he wanted to make a fortune, he should invent a machine that would help these Europeans kill each other. Maxim did and sold his machine guns to European countries on the eve of World War I, changing the nature of combat forever. So this is where we get into a little bit of warfare, right? Subterranean warfare and surface warfare. Later in life, but first, quickly, Maxim turned his attention from warfare to flight, building a steam engine-powered airplane that briefly rose from the ground while he was unable to achieve sustained flight. His amusement ride, the captive flying machine, became a staple of the British fairgrounds. He died April 24, 1916, which is only days before the Battle of the Somme, where over 1 million soldiers fell in 4 months of machine gun warfare. And Azazel does talk about the pice of PEEP, which is that inhaler that he invented that's supposed to help with respiratory illnesses. There's a picture of it here. If you're on YouTube, it's a precursor to the modern day inhaler. It was seen as crackery, but eventually became very popular, and hundreds of thousands were sold.
I love it. It was called the
Pice of,
pipe of peace.
the pipe of peace. Sir Hiram Maxim's pipe of peace and Maxim inhaler.
Nice.
Right?
And it kind of looks like a little crack pipe that you'd see
It does.
around today.
Right. It would look at home in Hunter Biden's pocket. For sure. So
Perfect for Parmesan cheese.
Back to the warfighting. The Maxim silencer was the first commercially successful firearm sound suppressor, developed by Hiram Percy Maxim, the son of the guy that we're talking about, who invented the machine gun, right? So his son invented the suppressor. He did so in tandem with the automobile muffler in the early 1900s. It was patented in 1909. The Maxim design was different than modern suppressors as it used curved vanes to force muzzle gases to spin in little vortices inside the device while they cooled, thus reducing their pressure. This design is expensive to manufacture and causes the silencer to heat up quickly.
Yeah, and you also lose muzzle velocity.
Yeah. Modern designs use baffles to slow down gases without absorbing too much heat. And here's an example of a Russian M1910 Maxim machine gun in a 7.62 by 54 millimeter round. It's the caliber of rounds it shoots, and it served throughout World War I, the Russian Revolution, the Russian Civil War, conflicts in the 1920s and 30s, Winter War, and even World War II. A simple and reliable design, it was very effective when properly placed. Its primary drawback was its weight, which prevented the gun crews from keeping up with an assault.
And apparently that stupidly thin piece of metal that's just Swiss cheesed that
Dude,
protects the gunner.
this next photo here
Like,
is
that's gnarly.
16 hits to the gun shield and water jacket on this Soviet M1910 Maxim, indicating the fight that the gun crew put up. Do you have a favorite World War One or World War Two machine gun?
No, that is it.
Yeah, for real. Wait until you see what four of them together looks like. So
It absolutely changed history.
it
You
did.
know, with one of those definingly overpowering pieces of equipment. It's, coming up with the rock, then coming up with the arrow, then coming up with the gun, and then the machine gun, like bring a gun to a machine gun fight, you know.
Yeah, for real. This is what caused soldiers to subterranean warfare. This is the reason why people started having to dig tunnels to blow each other up in World War One because it completely took the charge across the land and get the enemy out off the table because everybody's dead now thanks to the machine gun. And as you can see here in this next picture, he cut down a tree. It was an 18-inch white ash tree to demonstrate his gun to His Excellency General Li Hongchang of the Qin Dynasty in China.
Word.
What's that?
No, I'm just imagining like when the trees fight back, if it's like Tolkien or
Ancient trees.
that M. Night Shyamalan movie that we will be able to destroy the trees.
Dude, we can totally do another class on sentient trees. That is something that Azazel talks about. Pretty interesting stuff. But his Excellency General was a major military leader and reformer in China, and his name is worth a web search. The other two European men picture in this picture here are Sigmund Lowell and Sir Albert Vickers. Those names should all ring familiar. Sigmund Lowell owned DWM, Deutsche Waffen und see if I can get this, Deutsche Waffen und Munitionsfabriken, and his surname appeared on many guns you've heard of. Sir Albert Vickers is of the Vickers gun, which is a modified Maxim gun design. Vickers, in fact, bought the entire Maxim machine gun company. Suffice to say, all present were impressed by what they saw happen to the tree. Yeah. And this is a 5.7 centimeter Maxim Nordenfelt fortress cannon, which saw service from 1880 into the end of World War One. So it's a
Those
giant
machine
gun.
guns are terrifying too. And they pepper, meaning, they're not super accurate, but that makes them even more terrifying. They can just blanket.
Cluster bombs almost. Let's face it, you can never have too many Maxim guns. What were they truly trying to hit besides Zeppelins? Here's a picture of an AA gun.
Oh yeah, but that would be great against low flying aircraft. Like really great, because all you have to do is, get a couple bullets in the right spot, which is really hard to do. But now, you've got like 4 feet
Mhm.
of spray.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. True. This next picture is the number 47 of the original Maxim Nordenfelt 50 gun contract for Argentina in 1895. All roads lead back to Argentina. Isn't there some shit going on in Argentina right now? I think there is.
Yeah. Yeah, the country's being taken over by criminals.
Why would Argentina need such heavy weaponry? Question mark. He asks, Azazel does. There is no, that's also another mini class that we can do on the Argentina, which we kind of tried to touch on in the Black Goo episode that got mysteriously not recorded. Well, not mysteriously, but under weird circumstances, right?
You
So
have black goo in your brain that is controlling you, Bill.
could be possible.
You gave it to Ellie.
Yeah, let's not go that far.
You gave her the black goo.
Maybe she gave it to me. Anyway, this is a picture of the Colt Maxim model 1904. Did you know the first machine gun officially adopted by the U.S. military was the Colt Maxim model 1904? Originally produced by Vickers Sons and Maxim, production was later taken over by Colt, with the first American guns produced in 1908. While reliable, the Colt Maxim M1904 had the dubious distinction of being the heaviest of its breed. With water, the whole affair weighed in at a whopping 145 pounds. Only 287 of this model were ever produced, and today only 10 are registered, making it the rarest of the U.S. machine guns. Here's another one. This one is a piece that I would love to have for my collection. It says Azazel, a 7.5 by 55 millimeter Swiss Maxim model 1911 water-cooled machine gun, complete with accessories, including the Fortress scope for engaging targets at extended range. For the first time in history, humanity had the monopoly on violence, to be able to challenge subterranean societies. Hashtag MOV, monopoly on violence. So speaking of subterranean societies, this is where the silencer comes back into play. Certain situations on the surface and beneath require a more lighter and quieter touch. The original Maxim silencer suppressors are referred to as silencers in the NFA because a trade name, not because they truly silence weapons. These were a mail order item, as well as being available at hardware and department stores. If you think the design resembles an automotive muffler, that's because they're modeled after one another. Some hybrids entities are entirely blind and have never seen the light of day. Hearing, echolocation, on the other hand, is excellent. So, the Maxim silencer was standard issue as subterranean troops explored the deeper depths. Azazel points out, as he has stated many times, that all the causes of wars in the white world, bubble world, clown world, are complete and utter lies. You need a dumb majority to fight each other. That's why the real shadow war happens behind the scenes. Now, you might be wondering what made this gun go away. Well, we're about to find out why water-cooled machine guns went away. You can see this picture here of uh, a battalion of soldiers, a squad of soldiers trying to drag this thing up a giant rock, and it does not look very easy. The image is of Soviet troops hauling a PM 1910 Maxim machine gun on its wheeled mount up the side of a mountain, illustrates why water-cooled machine guns were replaced by lighter air-cooled models. In simplest terms, the gun teams were often unable to keep up with advancing infantry and thus were not there to support them when needed most. This was a chronic problem in Soviet after-action reports. The weight of the gun, mount, water, and ammo simply was so heavy the gun teams could not keep up. In time, this led to them being replaced by lighter and more versatile air-cooled models with quick change barrels, which could fill their role more effectively. There is a YouTube video of this gun popping off some rounds provided here in Telegram if you want to go dig that out and look at it. So this next picture is the quad Maxim guns.
That is the most badass looking gun ever made.
Doesn't it look like it?
Like, that is steampunk Terminator coming to mow down an army.
For real. Uh, so the picture is of the business end of a Soviet quadruple M1910/31 Maxim gun for anti-aircraft use. The caliber is the tried and true 7.62 by 54, with each gun firing at a cyclic rate of 600 rounds per minute. The whole rig was capable of putting out 2,400 rounds per minute. As they are water-cooled, this rate of fire could actually be sustained. While intended for use against low-flying aircraft, this configuration would have been devastating if employed against massed infantry. The M1910 Maxim remained in production until 1945 and saw combat throughout both World Wars. The quad mount here was developed between the World Wars. All right. So
You
now,
know what's crazy, Bill?
what's that?
That really wasn't that long ago.
No, no, it
Because
wasn't.
I'm thinking about this, like the time between when that was stopped being manufactured to when I was born, right, is the same amount of time as when I was born to me right now.
Is but a blink of the eye.
Exactly. Like my experience in my life thus far is how far away it was from when I was born. And we're looking at these old black and white photos, pre-Gatling guns, still using water cooled.
Right?
We really have come a long way as we sit here in our studios.
Yeah. It's pretty yeah. Invention, innovation, imagination really is what this boils down to. He had to imagine it first and then he manifested it. So
There's two ways to look at the world, and one of them that this really is magic. You can wave a wand around in a magical way, or you can wave your hands around and process the earth and then manipulate it so that all you need to do is move your finger and you can shoot an airplane out of the sky. Like it is magic.
seems like magic if you don't understand the technology, right?
Right? Like, what is magic? I'm going to conjure the earth and, boom, I'm going to destroy you. Okay, that's exactly what you did. That was a very complicated waving of your hands and moving and manipulating. But ultimately, it's just human beings going through certain motions. And then this piece of technology is there and it changes the world.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a clip on the screen right now of this thing in action as a anti-aircraft gun. Looks pretty formidable.
Yeah, just look at the recoil on that thing.
Mhm.
That's why you need so many rounds.
So now we have reached the interesting Black Project's career of Hiram Maxim's life. This is the alleged supposed double double identity, fiction or reality, the mystery of the vanishing gun inventor. So there are a few. Maybe we'll get to them here in a second. I'll just read what Azazel has. There are two other articles provided as additional sources. One is a BBC article about this incident, I guess we'll say it, um, that I'm about to read about. So this guy, other guy, possibly the same guy, named William Cantello and his odd inventions. We're going to talk about this first, him. So what this guy, William Cantello, claimed he was born around 1838 in the Isle of Wight, so over in UK. He first came to notice as an advanced engineer who developed many strange and unidentified objects around the 1870s. By this time, he owned a curiosity shop on French Street in Southampton. At that time, he was also the landlord of the Old Tower Inn. Beneath the inn, beneath the pub, was a tunnel where Cantello spent much of his time turning it into an underground workshop. Visitors to the workshop made claims of seeing strange light machines, humming globes, and odd weapons. It is also said that Cantello would often enter the tunnel and not be seen again for days, or even weeks on end. Cantello used the tunnel underneath the old Tower Inn for his experiments, and was later joined by his two sons, both engineers themselves. Locals reported hearing noises coming from the vicinity, but the family kept their work a closely guarded secret. In early 1880, Cantello announced that he had developed a groundbreaking machine gun. Now for the strange disappearance. Accounts differ regarding the actual event of Cantello's disappearance late in 1880. Some reports say that he went for an extended holiday on his own as a reward for his hard work. But he never came back, right? He never returned. Others claimed he was last seen entering his tunnel and vanished in a puff of smoke and strange lights. Hiram Maxim? Question mark. Cantello's two sons happened across a photograph of Maxim, whose similarity to their own father led them to believe that he was still alive and had assumed a new identity. Descriptions of the gun also sounded similar to the one they had worked on, and they set out to investigate. So they hired this private investigator, and so the sons tried to challenge Maxim, but he wanted nothing to do with them, claiming by letter that he was from America and not the Isle of Wight. This only led the sons to believe Maxim was in fact their father, as nobody outside the immediate family knew they originated from the Isle of Wight. He refused to meet the boys. Teleportation. With good evidence to support Maxim's previous life in the USA, along with his papers claiming that he had developed a way to transport himself from one place to another, the sons believed their father had been living a double life and teleporting himself backwards and forwards. So, just pull up one of these articles here real quick about the mystery of the vanishing gun inventor. Links will be included in the show notes. This one website is actually in French, so I had to have Google translate it for me. And I just wanted to read the description of Cantello's workshop. Says that the few visitors who had access to his laboratory said that inside one could see all kinds of strange machines. Some emitted lights, others looked like strange orbs that buzzed and sparked. We could also see what looked like weapons, but in appearance and functioning seemed completely unknown to the people who were able to look at them. All these machines seemed to come from elsewhere, and their technology gave the impression of coming from elsewhere. And then just to continue with this article, because it's pretty short. His two sons, also engineers, regularly came to provide him with help. The neighborhood said that strange sounds were regularly heard coming from the basement of the tavern. William went to his laboratory for whole days and nights. He didn't tell anyone what type of experiment he was conducting. Finally, in 1880, he announced that he had invented a new weapon for the battlefield. He presented a sort of weapon resembling a multi-barreled machine gun. Towards the end of the year, he disappeared. At first, it was thought he'd gone on vacation, but he had left no trace. He had moved large sums of money before disappearing, and rumors began that he was last seen entering his laboratory and disappeared through smoke and rays of light. His family began searching in vain. Finally, they contacted a private detective, and he claimed to have found his trace in America, but under a different identity, right? Indeed, in 1881, a certain Hiram Maxim suddenly appeared. He arrived in England with many mysterious inventions. Among these inventions was a machine gun of a type still completely unknown. He published several discoveries in the registers of inventions. In addition to these devices, he claimed to have invented a kind of machine capable of teleporting matter. The two sons noticed Hiram's resemblance to their father when they saw a photograph provided by the private detective, and we know that Hiram refused to meet the two men, claiming to be American and that he had nothing to do with the Cantello family. When Hiram Maxim presented his machine gun, it was noticed that it looked exactly like William Cantello's. Unfortunately, no one's been able to prove that it was one and the same person. So this is really still a mystery. And just looking at this BBC article, what happened to William Cantello? What we know of his story originates from a column in a local newspaper in 1930s, when various witnesses were still alive. The article contains a photograph of Cantello and Maxim, and Cantello look uncannily similar. Maybe I'll have to change my screen here so you can see this, Adam. This is the BBC article. Here's the pictures of the two gentlemen side by side. When Cantello's sons saw a photo of Maxim in a newspaper, they were amazed. It was the image of their missing father. They tracked him down at Waterloo Station and shouted "Father" at him. As they told it, they tried to approach him, but his train pulled away. Cantello, though, seems to have vanished off the face of the earth. His family engaged a private detective to look for him, but found and who supposedly traced him to America, but then the trail went cold. A large sum of money was withdrawn from his bank account, but the bank in question long ago ceased to exist and the records were lost. And then to complicate things, according to the BBC, both Cantello and Maxim had very large Victorian beards. The late Victorian era was not kind to the art of facial recognition, since most males over 30 sported exuberant facial hair, and all tend to look like a cross between Charles Darwin and a stern Santa. It seems likely, however, that the newspaper photograph captioned as Cantello is in fact Maxim. It doesn't, however, explain what happened to the vanishing gun maker. So, there's a little bit of mystery there. What do you think, Adam? Does this guy have invented a teleportation machine and have two families on different sides of the Atlantic?
Possibly, but at the same time, I also kind of go to those weird synchronicities of that whole like Lincoln Kennedy type of connection, or flight being created at the same time, or old photos of Nicolas Cage in the Wild Wild West that as we build technologies like photos, we'll probably start to realize that there's a lot more cyclical repetition, even in how people look and in flavors of lives. And, certain people of certain distinctive looks may have certain, characteristics. And who knows if that's got a quantum reality that's actually related to, like past lives and spirituality. You know, if this thing never ends and we're always part of it, that idea that uh, the moment is always now may be true.
Right? That makes kind of being it would I mean, okay, so when you're dead, like you're not in the here and now, and that seems kind of boring because you can't I mean, I don't, it's just random thought I had.
I was just talking to somebody about this at work, that somebody that I work with, that it's fascinating when you think about something like salvia, or like sage, that when people smoke it of certain strains, that they have an incredible experience, and they will go and, have like decades of their lives in which they live in another place, they have a family, and then all of a sudden they're ripped out of that experience and pulled back. And it was the experience of the drug. But what if that's more telling to the experience of life that uh, maybe that moment that you're being snapped out of is the moment that you are in now?
Yeah, yeah, that reminds me of
You
the
die at the end of it when you die in a dream and you wake up, you know. I'm not saying that it is, but it makes me think.
right. Yeah, it could just be a matter of a perception of time, right? And
Yeah. Well, and not to poo-poo on it, but when I said like, if it's all simulation, it doesn't matter. Does it matter if the Earth is flat if it's a simulation? Well, I guess it does in the perspective of Neo in the Matrix, but there's still an underpinning of experience that is our reality. And maybe that's all it is. Maybe the answer to everything is just enjoy the ride.
right, don't take things so seriously, maybe. That reminds me, I was watching the Men in Black movies when I was visiting my parents recently, and that scene at the end where Kay opens up the locker,
Hmm.
and it just turns out that it's a locker in a giant room full of other lockers, and there's giant aliens walking around in this giant room, and our universe is just this little one locker on a wall of lockers to these aliens. Which in turn, there was that small universe inside the locker at Central Station where Agent K had to go get his watch back. And there was little
Exactly.
creatures in there. Yeah.
And then, go to the third movie in which there's an infinitesimal number of existences and realities that are happening, will happen, could happen all at once. And then tie all of that together. And that is the mystery of reality.
That's what makes it so fun, right?
Hell yeah.
Okay, so to close up on Hiram Maxim real quickly, we'll touch on the last part of the Azazel class has to deal with Thomas Edison. So Maxim developed and installed, as we know, the first electric lights in a New York City building, the Equitable Life Building at 120 Broadway in the late 1870s. However, he was involved in several lengthy patent disputes with Thomas Edison over his claims to the light bulb. One of these actions regarded the incandescent bulb, for which Maxim claimed that Edison was credited by means of his better understanding of patenting law. Maxim claimed that an employee of his had falsely patented the invention under his own name, and that Edison proved the employer's claim to be false, and which eventually allowed him to out of screw him out of that project, and he allowed him to manufacture the light bulb without crediting Maxim as a true inventor. And what other wizards had disputes with Edison? Does any of those come to mind for you, Adam? Just not to put you on the spot, but
Tesla?
Tesla, exactly, bingo. Let's see what the peanut gallery had to say. Yep, Tesla.
Yeah, I've actually been to Edison's house as well.
Oh, neat.
Very fun place to go if you're ever in Florida. It's definitely worth the stop. If I
Oh,
remember, they had one of the um, what is it? I forget what you call it, but the old record players, the first ones that he created, where
phonographs.
there's still like bite marks on the frame because his hearing was so bad that he would bite onto the wood to be able to hear the reverberations.
Oh, crazy. So this guy was deaf too. Interesting. So, Azazel, I don't know why he ends this class with this book, science fiction novel by Garrett Serviss called Edison's Conquest of Mars. And Edison didn't have anything to do with the writing of this book, but it's essentially a sequel to what happens after the War of Worlds. You remember that movie, but ramped up more. Uh, like imagine, yeah, I'll just an 1898 science fiction mashup novel by American astronomer and writer Garrett Serviss Edison's Conquest for Mars was written as a sequel to The Fighters from Mars, an unauthorized and heavily altered version of H.G. Wells' 1897 story, The War of the Worlds. It has a place in the history of science fiction for its early development of themes and motifs that later became staples of the genre. I don't know what this has to do with Hiram other than his beef with Edison, and this happens to be a book about Edison's Conquest of Mars, which Edison had nothing to do with the writing of this book. But interestingly enough, one of the things in the book, uh, supposedly that this fictional fake character Edison came up with was the disintegration ray, like the one that Marvin the Martian uses, the disintegration gun. So it's just the start of that type of some long-standing motifs and themes in the science fiction genre. But yeah, so here's this little excerpt from testing the disintegrator from the book that he provides. I'll put the wiki link to it in the show notes if anybody's interested in looking at this later. Here's a picture of Marvin the Martian next to Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, World War Emperor William.
And these could all also just be like archetypal, repeats in history. You know
Right.
what I mean by
Well,
that?
yeah, everything's a copy of a copy.
Mm-hmm.
So to end with, flash forward to November 1916, as millions of Europe's young men were busy machine gunning each other to death in World War I, the inventor of the weapon died, a very rich man and a knight of the realm. His invention had revolutionized warfare. The centuries-old infantry advance became useless, as it could be simply mown down. Consequently, armies retreated into trenches while the generals worked out how on earth to fight this new kind of war. The man who had brought about this murderous step change was quietly buried in a South London cemetery. And then here are all the links that he provides, which I will put in the show notes. Class dismissed. And always remember, the work of an unknown good man has done, the work an unknown good man has done is like a vein of water flowing hidden underground, secretly making the ground green. Thomas Carlyle. This has been Hiram Maxim. Wizard of the Day. Green Wizard of the Day. Profile in Green Wizardry. So now you know why subterranean warfare came about. Hopefully that was enlightening. I sure learned a whole lot in doing the research. And that concludes our mini series of the overview of four factions and what their flavors look like. What do you think about that schema in general? Just this idea of these four teams going back into for as long as we can remember at odds with each other. Is that too far fetched, Adam, or does it make
The Hatfields and the McCoys? No,
yeah.
no. Just kind of like I was talking earlier about, an industry is built and then it runs like a machine. What happened with the oil industry because of the Diesel brothers still living and breathing today. It's, everything's that way. Thoughts, ideas. I assume that magic and everything else behind the scenes can kind of have that, spreads like a wildfire type of energistic aspect. So yeah, I could absolutely see things and themes that just run through history.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if there's a central governing like power to the factions, but I mean the Reds probably have one for sure.
Well, and maybe I'm abstracting this too much, but
Well,
try assigning meaning to the seasons, you know, but they're going to happen, but every winter's not the same, every summer's not the same. There's still bigger, global things. There's still ice ages within those seasons. And I don't know, I just see themes and things like that can also be kind of, in the underpinnings of reality, kind of seasonal in their own way. Like the ages, the age of Aquarius, the age of, it.
Yeah,
Morality has seasons.
it does. Morality changes for sure. Like I know one of the things going through Catholic school taught me was that moral relativism is a no-no, right? Like there's one true thing and that's all there is, right? But that changes. Society changes, morals change.
That's
His
right. And then we're always judging it against history.
his story, right? Who's writing that? Anyway, you can write your own
Exactly.
story.
The victors. Or maybe it's even weirder than that. Maybe it's live in the moment, Bill, because the moment this reality, maybe why history seems to have a new flavor, is that when you change this reality, all the other connected realities also change. And if you are that thing as a society, as a race of people individually, and then all of us collectively, uh, whatever flavor of history we are living and experiencing now is also the forward and I guess the future and the past as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's all fractals.
Exactly.
And those who control the knowledge we have about our past have much more say over where we go in the future. But that's getting off on another tangent. Uh,
Exactly. Don't let people know how powerful their thoughts are and then use things like advertising to manipulate them into the reality that you want.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But speaking of stories and manipulation, manifesting, uh, turning our attention now to the sword segment and Neville Goddard's 1952, The Power of Awareness. This chapter called Attention is only one page, front and back, so super short, but very hits home. It did for me anyway. And I only read this once before trying to read it on air or on the recording here, so forgive me if I kind of stumble through it. But starts out with a Bible verse, of course, from James chapter 1, verse 8. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Attention is forceful in proportion to the narrowness of its focus. That is, when it is observed with a single idea or sensation. It is steadied and powerfully focused only by such an adjustment of the mind as permits you to see one thing only. For you steady the attention and increase its power by confining it. The desire which realizes itself is always a desire upon which attention is exclusively concentrated. For an idea is endowed with power only in proportion to the degree of attention fixed on it. Concentrated observation is the attentive attitude directed from some specific end. The attentive attitude involves selection, i.e., choice, right? For when you pay attention, it signifies that you have decided to focus your attention on one object or state rather than another. Therefore, when you know what you want, you must deliberately focus your attention on the feeling of your wish fulfilled until the feeling fills the mind and crowds all other ideas out of consciousness. The power of attention is the measure of your inner force. Concentrated observation of one thing shuts out other things and causes them to disappear. The great secret of success is to focus the attention on the feeling of the wish fulfilled without permitting any distraction. All progress depends upon an increase of attention. The ideas which impel you to action are those which dominate the consciousness, those which possess the attention. Another quote from Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14. This one thing I do, forgetting those things that are behind, I press forward the mark. This means this one thing you can do, forgetting those things that are behind. You can press forward the mark of fulfilling your mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. To the unenlightened man, this will seem to be all fantasy. Yet all progress comes from those who do not take the accepted view, nor accept the world as it is. As was stated heretofore, if you can imagine what you please, and if the forms of your thought are as vivid as the forms of nature, you are, by virtue of the power of your imagination, master of your fate. And I would like to add in here my own little tidbit that makes you a freaking sorcerer. Like, you're a badass. Your imagination is you yourself, and the world, as your imagination sees it, is the real world. When you set out to master the movements of attention, you must be done. I'm sorry. When you set out to master the movements of attention, which must be done if you would successfully alter the course of observed events, it is then you realize how little control you exercise over your imagination and how much it is dominated by sensory impressions and by a drifting on the tides of idle moods. Idle moods. To aid in mastering the control of your attention, practice this exercise. Night after night, just before you drift off to sleep, strive to hold your attention on the activities of the day in reverse order. Focus your attention on the last thing you did, that is, getting into bed, and then move it backward in time over the events until you reach the first event of the day, getting out of bed. This is no easy exercise, but just as specific exercises greatly help in developing specific muscles, this will greatly help in developing the muscle of your attention. Your attention must be developed, controlled, and concentrated in order to change your concept of yourself successfully and thereby change your future. Imagination is able to do anything, but only according to the internal direction of your attention. If you persist night after night, sooner or later you will awaken in yourself a center of power and become conscious of your greater self, the real you. Attention is developed by repeated exercise or habit. Through habit, an action becomes easier, and so, in course of time, gives rise to a facility or faculty which can then be put to higher uses. When you attain control of the internal direction of your attention, you will no longer stand in shallow water, but will launch out into the deep of life. You will walk in the assumption of the wish fulfilled as on a foundation more solid than even earth. More solid even than earth. The end. So, yeah, relatively short excerpt or chapter there from Neville. First impressions, Adam, anything pop out to you?
Nothing specific.
Well, yeah. I circled a few words. The attentive attitude involves selection. So yeah, this just to tie it into the theme of the segment, right? Being exercising our choice, right? Our free will. Are we going to be a victim or a hero, right? Being a hero requires radical responsibility. So not really something that you can do when you're a victim. The other thing that I circled was the great secret of success is to focus the attention on the feeling of the wish fulfilled without permitting any distraction. So this reminded me of um, Hall. Who was it? Not Hall. Napoleon Hill, and outwitting the devil. So, problem of evil, something that we'll get into on another show, right? Is simpler than one might think, especially after reading that Winning the Devil book, in that the devil only needs to distract you for like a split second. So it's the distraction that is the tricky part, right? It's not necessarily, an evil thing. It's distraction. It's easy to overcome if you try. But yeah, we'll get into that book later. And I think, oh yeah, the exercise with going back in reverse order throughout your day. I have tried that. Not consistently or over a long period of time, but I always when I do try it, I always seem to fall asleep before I get to the beginning of the day. So I don't know, maybe there's something to that. Have you ever tried that? Or do you have any tricks to help you fall asleep? Or any exercises?
No, I have an incredibly difficult time falling asleep, but not in the traditional sense. When I'm really, really tired, I lay down and I'm out. If I lay down in the bed and I've been laying down for 5 minutes, I have to get up because I'm not going to go to sleep. So my way of doing it is usually get so tired that I just have to go to bed
Yeah.
or eat a bunch of carbs.
Oh yeah. Carb oatmeal. Take some oatmeal coma
Pop-Tarts,
naps. Pop.
Pop-Tarts, bioengineered ingredients,
Mm.
TBHQ.
Well,
Got to get my daily fruits.
fruit taste. Flavors. Artificial and uh, natural flavors. Speaking of, another great segue to something that is neither artificial nor flavored. Weird segue. Our free scalar
Segme, I
energy
like it.
free scalar energy session Fridays. This has still been going on, even though I'm not putting out episodes every week, or haven't been, right? But Derek does have this free service that he offers on a weekly basis to anybody that just wants to sign up. All you need to do is put your name in the hat, so to speak, and that all that involves is going through a checkout process on the website, but it's free, so you're not buying anything. You just have to get your name in there, right? So head on over to Derek's website. There's a whole page that explains what exactly scalar energy is. There's links to studies. There's so much information over there. So because we're short on time now, I will lead you or direct you to over there to learn more about what exactly scalar energy is. But for this coming Friday, the session is going to be focused on digestion and gut health. So helping boost our part of our immune system, right? So good stuff. I've already signed up. I think you should too. Starts at Friday at noon Eastern, I believe. So if you do sign up and you feel anything weird, or you just want to write the show, you can reach us at chrononautbill@mail.com. That is the show's email address, the best way to get a hold of us. Link will be in the show notes. And we are grateful to be sponsored by Metaphysical Wares. We don't have to ask for any donations because the sponsor foots the bills or takes care of the bills for us, right? So, but I would just ask you to share the show, right? Help spread the love, however you can. Rate the show possibly if you're really enjoying it. Give us a nice rating on whatever review or whatever service that you're using. And Until next time, Chrononauts, vibrate high and carpe diem.